It's great to be last because you get to kind of put together all the themes that we've heard in the last couple of days. And what I want to focus on is kind of more personal to you and to your companies. I want to talk about, we heard a lot of people talking about we have to create work in a way that's for the 21st century and not the 20th century. And what I do now, I've been gone from Netflix for about 6 years. And so since I've been working with like little bitty startups and really big corporations, it's so weird. I find so many things we do at work to be like straight out of the 60s. It's just crazy stuff. So in general, I want you to think about, and I'll wrap on this again at the end, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we do because we've always done it. And we have this weird management language around it. Like we say, one of my biggest rants is the annual performance review, which I think is utter fucking waste of time. But you know why we do it? Because everybody else does it. And then when everybody else does it, we call it best practices. Like measured by who, right? So what I do in my life now is I go around talking to people about questioning the things that we do, about how we manage people, that whether or not they are actually functional anymore. I mean, basically functional. Not only could we do it better, but are there a lot of things that we could throw away? So what I thought I would do today, I took my assignment very seriously, and I want to teach you a lesson. I'm not a Harvard professor, so I won't be calling on you unless you want to be. And was that cool or what, right? So my lesson's a little bit different. I want to give you a lesson in building a great company. And if you're a student, I want you to think about this as how you're going to think about your career forever. And here's the fundamental basics of what underlies my theory. First of all, unless you're a student, raise your hand if you're in the same company that you joined when you graduated from college. Okay, 2. I've done groups of 5,000 people, and it's 2. So the idea of retention and that you're going to join a firm and it's going to take care of you and your career for the rest of your life is over. And if you're running a company or you're running a team, I want you to think about ways that we can create organizations that are really effective real time. And my biggest message to you, and one of the secrets to our success at Netflix, was that we always focused on the company that we wanted to be, not the company that we are. So for those of you that heard Greg Peters this morning, that was exactly how we transitioned from one business to another business to another business, because we had enormous clarity about what the new business looked like. So here's my teaching for you. It's an exercise, and you can all do it. In 6 months, and I choose 6 months as a time frame because it's kind of polar. Like if I go to a little startup, I'm like, so when do you want this to happen? They're like, someday. And then when I go to a big corporation, it's like, it's part of our 5-year plan. Neither one of them are very good answers. And so it's hard. One of the things we don't do particularly well is put time wrappers on things. So I think a really good time wrapper is 6 months. I think we can predict 6 months out pretty well, right? In 6 months, if your team was amazing, your company, your team, amazing, and I don't mean like smidge better, and I don't mean doing more, I mean like everyone around you is like, holy shit, these guys are amazing, they pulled it off. What will be occurring then that's not occurring now? Okay? And give me all your numerals. You've got them, all those metrics. It's more revenue, it's better retention, it's newer customers, it's accelerating the technology. You all have numbers, right? Especially us tech people, we just love our numerals. So that's okay, give me all your numerals, put them in a little pile here. And then make a movie of it. And you're walking around and this team is amazing. I mean, oh my God, it's incredible. What's happening? What do you see? Are there more meetings? Are there less meetings? Are people like getting in conference rooms and having knockdown, drag-out fights on behalf of the customer and doing the right thing? Or is somebody saying, God, that sounds like a stupid idea coming out of marketing. I better go find out what they're doing. What's occurring then that's not occurring now? Okay? And when I talk to CEOs, I see the little, I almost see people close their eyes and they can see their amazing company. And then you say, well, in order for those things to occur, what would people need to know how to do? So if you're in a startup or you're in a young company that's going to be successful and you can hold it in your hand, your issues are often around scaling. We talked about this, a lot of people talked about this over the conference. They're either about scale or complexity. And here's the deal with scale. I think that humans can imagine 10x. Some people maybe 50, but man, it's hard to imagine 100 unless you've seen 50. And so that's the part of your organization where sometimes it's time when you scale to bring in people that have seen stuff that you haven't seen before. Remember, the key to the scaling question is time. So was anybody with Greg Peters? And you guys are here this morning, the two of you guys? Okay. So one of the things they talked about was cloud technology. I remember at Netflix when, so here's a good Netflix story. We'd grown 30% quarter over quarter, 3 quarters in a row. Pretty impressive, right? So we come to our executive team meeting and Reed Hastings wants to do what Reed Hastings liked to do is disaster planning. Like, what if it all went to hell tomorrow? So we decided that that time, just for sport, we would do like, what if it kept going? What if we kept growing 30% quarter over quarter, 3 quarters in a row? So we go, our CFO goes to the whiteboard, he does top line revenue. And he's doing that happy dance that CFOs do, like, that's a lot of money. That's Barry McCarthy, who's CFO of Spotify now, right? So he likes when those numbers look like that. So he's doing the happy dance. Ted Sarandis, head of content, looks at the numbers. And at the time, we would wistfully say, someday we'll be as big as HBO. Someday. And Ted's looking at the numbers. He's like, shit, you guys, that's next year. Like, that's a possibility. So then we're all stunned, right? Because really, that was like in our lifetime. We're like, oh my God. And our then head of product said, by the way, that's 1/3 of the US internet bandwidth. And we thought, what? How do you even think about those things in those days? So we get done with the conversation. I sit down with Neil and I said, does anybody know how to do that? He said, I don't know. I'm like, do we know how to do that? He's like, absolutely not. Right? So we start brainstorming, like, who's moving big chunks of data? Is it eBay? Is it Amazon? Is it Google? I mean, who knows about video? Who knows about... This is a big, big problem. And we also realize it's got to be in the cloud, right? It has to happen in the cloud because we're running DVD by mail out of a data center. So we go to our data center guys and we say, hey guys, here's the problem. And they say, like all good engineers, no worries, go exec something, we got this. We'll build the cloud. And I looked at those guys and I thought, if anybody on God's earth could build us a cloud, it's you. But not in 9 months, right? So when we had that conversation with those folks, they were like, what do you mean? I've been here 7 years, I've built this amazing data center, am I not going to be part of that? And the answer was, maybe not, right? Maybe not. So if you look at realistically where you're going to go, sometimes when you get to issues of scale or complexity, you have to work backwards and say, how do I make sure that I put together the right team of people who can do that? Because then, and only then, you look at the skills and experience of the people that you have on the team. And the reason why I want to teach you this methodology is not just that it allows you to assess the skills and experiences that you have on your team. This methodology can do a lot of things for you. Number one, you have now got clarity about the vision for your team. You can articulate it. You can tell the people that are currently working here what's going to happen in the next 6 months to a year time frame. How cool is that? Huh? You're setting the context for what you're actually going to do in a time frame with numerals, with articulation, with an idea about what you're going to need to be good at. Then you can follow up with every member of the team and decide whether or not they're the right people to do it going forward, right? So here's the scary thing I tell HR people. I say, you know how you hire somebody to do something and then they do it and then it's done. Then we all worry about what's next. Sometimes what's next is something next somewhere else. My fundamental thing at Netflix that changed my life was I decided I wanted to create a great company to be from. So I want you to sit with that for a second. If that's your job, if you run a company or you run an organization, if you spend every single day saying, I'm going to create a team of people that does such amazing work that having that on their resume means something, you're going to think about things a lot differently. Okay, so the other thing about when you back up in this methodology, so now I've said, now I'm able to have a conversation with everybody on my team and say, gee, I don't know, let's think about what your role is going to be on this team 6 months, especially if we're going to change gears. And you know those honest conversations? You can have them. You can have them. You got 6 months to have the conversation because you've already talked about it. And people understand the context of what you're trying to do. That's thing one. Thing two is, now you know who to hire, right? Now you're hiring for the deltas. And the deltas that you're hiring for are people who are going to help you solve that problem 6 months out. And when you look for people to solve a problem, then you'll take anybody who can help you do it. Because here's how it typically works in a company. You write a requisition to hire someone new. Okay, I know how this works. I was a recruiter. What are requisitions? What do they describe? The person that left that you didn't want to leave. The fantasy person that doesn't exist. Whatever it takes to get it approved, and then ask for 2. Am I right? And then you say, when I hire that person, who do I want to hire? Someone articulate, smart, fast on their feet, good decision maker, someone just like me. Maybe me 10 years ago, because I don't really want to be threatened by the current me, right? Which is how we end up hiring like, hires like, hires like, hires like, hires like. So if you start with the problem and you work your way back to who could do it, you might hire somebody differently than you might hire before. You might even hire a woman. You might even hire a woman or a man that's sitting in front of you. So the first place we all look, those of us who manage other people, is, and this is, you guys who've done this, you know what I'm talking about. It's like, oh shit, we got this terrible problem. Man, we got to get on this. We got to put together a team. Who should run the team? What about, right? So you want to make sure that whoever that name is, you've got 5 of them. So you need to constantly be working on who are those people that can lead the teams to solve the problems that are in front of you. And then you might take somebody inside of your company and you might go, dude, we got this problem. You're actually not qualified. But you've solved a lot of problems here. You understand the company. You understand the time frame. You have a track record of delivering things. We're going to give you a chance. We're going to take a chance. Are you willing? Right? So then I can say to you, this might not work out. And the right thing for the company is to have the right person in the job, and it might not be you. But if you're willing to take the risk, I'm willing to take the risk. And that kind of honesty gives us both a better chance. Instead of 6 months later you going, well, why'd you give me the job if you didn't think I could do it? Right? Management. People get cynical when we lie to them. I worked with geeks my whole life, right? I love conferences like this. It's like I'm with my people. Engineers, software engineers, here's how they're wired. Most of you know this, but I'll put it in plain English. The world is good or bad, it's right or wrong, it's black or white, it's 0 or 1. Anything in between is bullshit. There's no such thing as nuance in the engineer brain, right? So we can tell the engineer brain an absolute fact. We're going to give it a try. Maybe you can do it. Maybe you can't do it. And so when we constantly do this, we're able to build teams that create the organizations of the future, not being able to only do what we want to do with the teams that we already have. And it doesn't mean that I don't like lifelong learning. I do. Lifelong learning might be being in a number of firms all through your career. It doesn't mean that I don't think developing people isn't a good thing to do. I do. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. I think you need to be very realistic about timeframes. So when somebody says to you early in their career, I'm in finance and I'd like to be a CFO, it's really important that you let them know it's not Thursday, okay? That there's a progression in how those progressions go. If you're early in your career, for my students in the room, remember what I said. So when you go interview for a job, what do you want to find out? What's the problem we're trying to solve? That's the only thing you need to find out in an interview. What's the problem the team's trying to solve, and what would be your role in helping to solve it? And then you want to look at solving those problems for the rest of your life. So I have an algorithm for success. This is, I say the word algorithm because it makes me sound smart. Is what you love to do, that you're extraordinarily good at doing, something we need someone to be great at. And so when somebody on your team is cranky, it could be because they finished building that amazing thing and now you'd like them to maintain it. And they're not maintainers, they're builders, and they don't want to do it anymore, but they still have a job and that's what you want them to do, so you made them do it, and so they'll stay, but they'll be cranky. Or when you find yourself coming to work and you say, if only they realized I'm a writer, they just don't care about this amazing skill I have, they might not care. Okay? So both those sides of the equation are how you think about how you pass through your career for the rest of your life, right? And then the other dimension that's really interesting that I think speaks highly to like the Me Too movement that we've talked about today is it's not just your demographics. I mean, like I hate the word millennial. Like you're a millennial, I was a millennial. It's called being in your 20s. What do you want? Everything. When do you want it? Now. Right? And then things change, right? My son's 30. I tease him. I'm like, so what are you, a third-millennial? Do I have to call you a new name now? But as things change, as your life changes, then you have different trade-offs. So remember all the dimensions you have. You have where the person's at in their career, what the time frame is for them to acquire the skills they need to do the great job, how it is that you're accommodating the space that they have in their life. Right? So those early stage startups, the reason why they tend to be populated by young people who work all the time is that young people can work all the time, right? I had this reporter call me, it wasn't Kara, who said her theory was all of the great candidates, all of the great talent in the world is flocking to the coast to live in the cities because San Francisco and New York are the coolest places to live. And all the big tech companies, it's over. Silicon Valley is over because the whole world is going to these two urban areas, right? So all reporters have a premise. This is their premise. And I said, wow, that's kind of interesting. You know, have you ever been to the Facebook campus? Have you been to the Facebook campus that is a direct replica of Mission Street in San Francisco? Oh, yeah, it's cool. Like, why do you think they're not in Mission Street in San Francisco? 'Cause they're not cool? I'm like, no, they don't fit. They get 10,000 people. There's 10,000 people on Mission Street in San Francisco. And oh, by the way, the reason why they're in Mountain View is because they can have that giant campus. And the reason why they can have a lot of people in that giant campus is a lot of people are going to want to have children and families, and they're going to be on a different campus, right? The urban life isn't for everybody, right? And the other thing is they're going to be able to attract and retain and develop people who want to solve bigger and better problems. So you want to think about the size and the scope of the problems that you're trying to solve, and who has the experience and the desire to help you solve those problems. And once you have that articulation, then you can build the team of tomorrow, not just riff off the team that you have today. And the other thing you can do for me is when you build that team of tomorrow, in order to make them unbelievably successful, remember how we've set them up now. This is what we need to do. This is how we need to do it. This is what our time frame is for doing it. Then what I want you to do in order to make that successful is just get out of the way. Get out of the way. If you're doing stuff that seems to be wasting your time and wasting their time and slowing you down, then consider, rather than reinventing it, to just stop doing it and see whether or not it matters, right? I'll leave you with feedback, because I did say the part about how I hate the annual performance review, and I do. I think it's stupid. But I think feedback's really important. And so I want you to think about when feedback is effective. And the one that most people think that feedback means constructive criticism, means telling somebody something that they don't like but being nice about it, which if you're an engineer, this does not flow, right? It doesn't make any sense. It is an effect. It's a feedback mechanism that we most always use. I usually translate it into guilt tripping. It's what you do with your kids or your pets, right? That bad thing you did, don't do that bad thing again. And then the next time you do that bad thing, because you'll feel bad. And eventually you'll stop doing. But I mean, it's really slow. So consider this kind of feedback. That was amazing. Right there, right then. Do that again. And you'll do that 5 times this afternoon. So remember that feedback in the moment is really, really important. Feedback in the moment means you can say, hey man, that conversation we just had was kind of weird and you're mansplaining again, so stop doing that, and you can stop doing that, right? Instead of reporting it to HR that there's a pattern of harassment, right? So the more we can get in people's faces, talking to each other about what we need to do to be successful, what the reality of our work is, what the time frame of what we need to get done, and how we serve the customer each and every day, then I think we're going to be able to build those amazing companies for the 21st century. Thank you.